My 19-year-old son Adam expressed his feelings for me while my spouse was abroad on business. Our confused and overpowering emotions drove us to cross a boundary. Even when my husband returned, I kept communication with him. I am unclear how to continue. The most intense but exciting night of my life happened on a quiet Friday. Lying on my back, I gazed up to see the pale patterns of moonlight on the ceiling. My thoughts was confused and restless. I felt alone since my husband Mike was away for another 2 months and I hadn't seen him in 3 weeks. I didn't realize I wasn't alone until I heard the tiny creak of the door shattering the stillness. I sat up slowly, looking at the pale figure at the doorway. My son Adam stood there, his broad shoulders silhouetted against the pale hallway light. He halted with one hand on the doorframe as if it were the only thing holding him standing. He murmured "Mom" gently and reluctantly. I massaged my eyes and felt a knot form in my chest at the sound of his words. "What is wrong?" I questioned. He didn't respond immediately away, standing immobile with his shadow cast across the room. After a time, he walked inside with his bare feet, leaving gentle thuds on the carpet. Something about his careful, even fearful motions made the air in the room seem heavier. I could not sleep. He said, his voice was barely above a whisper. I looked at the clock on my nightstand. It was 2 a.m. Adam was not the kind to wake me awake unless something concerned him. My chest tightened as I dangled my legs over the bed, gesturing for him to come closer. "What's happening?" I questioned softly. He stopped again before sitting on the edge of the bed, his posture upright and his hands firmly clenched in his lap. I watched him for a minute, but he kept his eyes focused on the floor, uneasiness flowing from him. "Adam, you are welcome to chat to me," I muttered gently. "Whatever it is, I'm here." He drew an anxious breath and fidgeted with the hem of his t-shirt. "It's tough to describe." He acknowledged that I had been detecting something. "I've been feeling odd and I'm not sure what to do about it." His remarks made me quiver with unease. Despite my concern, I leaned slightly forward and maintained a forceful voice. "How do they differ?" He looked up at me, his eyes seeking mine with an intensity that surprised me. "It's about someone," he continued, whose voice was dropping, "someone I'd been thinking about a lot, and someone you wouldn't expect." Relief momentarily shone through me. Perhaps this was about a girl in school, a crush. He wasn't sure how to handle it. Adam had always been guarded with his feelings, keeping them bottled up until they became unbearable. "Okay," I answered, offering him a consoling smile. "Who is it? Someone from school?" He shook his head quickly and his eyes fell again. "No," he replied calmly. "This is not someone from school." Then, as I gently pushed, a strange fear started to creep into my chest. "Adam told me that whatever it is, we'll work it out." He took a deep breath, his chest rising and falling as if summoning courage. When he spoke again, his voice was trembling. "It's you, Mother," he eventually said. "It's always been you." The phrase hit me like a tidal wave, leaving me speechless. For a moment, I couldn't talk or think. My mind tried to grasp what he'd just said, but the effect left me stunned. "Adam," my voice started to waver. "So what are you saying?" He up, suddenly pacing the room like a caged animal, his hands running through his hair, pulling on the strands as if trying to rip the words from his mind. "I know how that sounds," he responded quickly. "I realize what I'm doing is wrong, but I can't stop myself. I've tried so hard to push it away and ignore it, but it's always there." I gazed at him, my heart pounding so hard that I could scarcely hear his words. "Adam, please don't tell me this isn't real," he broke off speaking. "You understand my feelings. I've never felt this way for someone else. It's not just adoration or a stupid infatuation. It is much deeper." I muttered to Adam again, my voice shaking. "You are my kid, and what you're feeling isn't love. It's something else." "It's love," he shouted, his voice raspy from excitement. "You're everything to me, Mom. You are the only one who has ever understood me and made me feel worthwhile. How could it not be love?" My eyes welled up with tears as I tried to comprehend what he had said. My kid, my wonderful child whom I had raised and cherished, was displaying feelings that I couldn't comprehend. I couldn't reciprocate the sentiments, yet something within me stirred, a strange mix of emotions that I didn't want to accept. Looking back, I think I didn't recognize it. At first, I think I tried to ignore it. "Adam, you're perplexed. You're going through a lot right now, and maybe these emotions aren't confused," he said, turning to face me. His eyes were cloudy with unshed tears, and his jaw was set with determination that made my chest ache. I've never been more confident about anything in my life, and I noticed it. Right instantly, I could see he was attracted to me. I didn't want to ignore it, but as his mother, I was forced to. I stretched out and placed my hand on his arm. Adam, I said softly, these emotions will pass. I promise that they will pass. When they do, you'll see things more clearly. What if they don't? He mumbled, his voice cracking. What if this is who I am? What if this is the way I should feel? My throat tightened, and for a brief period I was unable to speak. I didn't have the reaction he was searching for. I had no clue how to ease the pain in his eyes. All I could do was hope that over time clarity would emerge, and that this catastrophe would not define us. You're not alone in this. I eventually spoke, my voice wobbly, but determined. We will get through this, Adam. He stared at me for a long time, his eyes filled with vulnerability, making my heart hurt. I don't want to lose you, Mom, he said quietly. I can't lose you. You will not, I replied aggressively by seizing his arm. Whatever happens, I'll always be here. Why not join me tonight? Perhaps that would help a bit, I said as I returned to my blankets. He nodded slowly and got into the bed. I pulled him close, feeling something I hadn't shared with him. I murmured good night, honey, and he smiled at me. The silence that followed was uncomfortable, but not dreadful. It was the kind of stillness that held promises delicate yet sincere. As he closed his eyes, I felt a glimmer of faith that we could weather the storm no matter how difficult it seemed. But deep inside, I knew this was only the beginning. A night like this was certain to happen again, but it would end in a completely different manner. This time nothing occurred, but more was on the way. Love does not vanish softly, especially in a complex relationship like this one. It demanded to be reckoned with, but I had no idea how that reckoning would appear. The morning after Adam's confession seemed surreal. The normal stillness of the home pushed down on me like a suffocating weight. Every nook, every familiar item seemed to reflect the unsaid tension between us. I tried to keep myself occupied with housekeeping, hoping that the routine would help me feel grounded. My hands shook as I folded the clothes, and my mind raced with unresolved questions. What precisely did this imply for us, him and me? The sound of a chair scraping across the kitchen floor startled me. Adam sat at the table looking at a bowl of cereal that seemed as untouched as my coffee. His hair was knotted and his eyes were cloudy from exhaustion. He had not slept, and neither had I in the morning. I said hesitantly to break the stillness. He glanced up with an unreadable expression. Morning, he replied hoarsely. I poured another cup of coffee, the sound of it filling the mug being louder than needed. I joined him at the table, and the space between us seemed both too large and too near. For a minute, none of us spoke. Everything that had not been expressed lingered in the air. I began telling Adam about last night, but he interrupted me. I meant what I said. Despite his conflicted expression, he spoke strongly. I won't pretend I didn't. I closed my eyes momentarily, forcing myself to be silent. I know you're being honest, I responded quietly. But Adam, what you're experiencing is beyond our control. It is not something we should act on. He leaned back in his chair, his hands gripping the table's edge. Why not? He asked. His voice was tinged with resentment. Why does love need to follow rules and boundaries? Isn't love supposed to be free? I took a deep breath and sought for the appropriate words. Love is more than just how we feel. Adam, I explained. It is about doing what is right and helpful for all parties involved. And what you're saying might harm both of us. He looked aside, his jaw tightening. I don't want to hurt you, he added gently. That's the last thing I want. I know, I said, reaching across the table and resting my hand on his. I don't want to harm you either. That's why we need to be cautious. We need to find a way to go over this. His fingers tightened around mine. For a moment, I saw him as the youngster he once was, the child who had clutched my hand in fear and turned to me for support and comfort. But this was different. He looked at me differently now. I'm not sure I can get over it, he said. His voice was barely above a whisper, but I'll try. Thinking about you made tears fill up in my eyes. I gave his hand a little squeeze. That's all I ask. The days that followed were filled with uncomfortable conversations and artificial normalcy. Adam tried to keep his distance by retiring to his room or spending lengthy hours away from the home. I told myself that it was for the best. The space would enable him to process his feelings, but I miss him. Everything had changed, even the comfortable rapport we had previously established. We have slept in the same bed every night since he confessed. However, I saw a space between us. One evening while making supper, I heard the front door open and shut. Adam entered the kitchen with his hair soaked from the rain. He stared at me for a long time, as if deciding whether to say something. "Hey," I said, attempting to maintain a friendly tone. "You are barely on time. Dinner is almost ready." He did not respond quickly. Instead, he moved over to the counter and leaned against it, arms crossed. He eventually acknowledged that I had been thinking. "What was this about?" I inquired. "About us," he explained. His stare remained unwavering. Regarding what I said that night, I swallowed hard and braced myself. I understood which night he was alluding about, and of course, Adam, I said that I believed we had agreed. I know he interrupted, but I'm not here to dispute. I simply need to say something. I nodded and signaled for him to go. I have been trying to find out how to cope with these emotions. He talked gently but strongly, and suddenly I realized something. I don't want to lose what we have. "Mom, even if the result isn't what I expected, I'd rather have you as my mother than lose you." I was completely relieved. His speech was tinged with regret, however. I told Adam, "You will not lose me. Whatever happens, I'll always be there for you." He nodded and formed a narrow line with his lips. I realize he stated his voice was kind, yet it is harsh. It's incredibly hard. I came closer and rested my hand on his arm. "It will take time," I said softly. "But you're strong, Adam, and I'll aid you in any way I can." His eyes met me. For a little while, the tension between us seemed to ease. "Thank you, Mom," he whispered quietly. "This means a lot." We stood in the kitchen, the rain pounding on the windows. For the first time in days, I felt certain that we would be all right. However, life has a way of complicating things when you least expect it. Just when I thought we had achieved some kind of peace, something occurred that threatened to destroy what Adam and I had built, an uncomfortable ceasefire that lasted for a time, weak but effective. He attempted to grin more, laugh at my jokes, and join me for meals like he used to do. I clutched onto those moments, certain that things were better. However, late at night when the house was quiet and I was alone with my thoughts, the weight of his confession remained. After a hard day at work, I saw Adam in the living room. He sat on the sofa, looking blankly at the TV. An old sitcom's laugh track resonated weirdly in the otherwise silent room. He glanced up as I arrived, his face inscrutable. I sat next to him and inquired if he was all right. He shrugged. "Yeah, just thinking." I hesitated to discuss anything in particular. He chuckled quietly, but there was no humor in it. "What am I not thinking about?" My stomach twisted. "Adam, I thought we were getting over this." "I'm trying," he said quickly. "I am, but it is not that easy. Feelings cannot be turned off like a switch." "I understand," I said gently, "and I don't expect you to. But we must keep working on it for both of our sakes." He turned to face me, his stare fixed on mine. "Have you considered it?" He inquired unexpectedly, his tone low about us. "Consider what it might be like if circumstances were different." I froze when he asked. "Adam, you have caught me off guard. Do not lie to me." He encouraged, yet his tone was frenzied rather than controlling. "Please say the truth." I turned aside, my mind racing. The reality was harsh. I was entangled in feelings that I couldn't quite grasp. Of course I considered it. How could I not, after what he had said? But acknowledging those feelings even to myself seemed like crossing a line I couldn't undo. "It doesn't matter what I've thought," I eventually confessed, forcing my voice to stay calm. "What matters is that you do the right thing, and this is incorrect." He exhaled and ran his fingers through his hair. "I know you think so. What if no Adam?" I interrupted. "There is no what if. We're not having this talk." He gazed at me for a long time, his face full of frustration and sorrow. "You are afraid," he eventually acknowledged. "Yes, I acknowledged that it's not just about you and me. It's about all we've accomplished and everything we fear losing." But I was lying. I was terrified for the wrong reasons. I was reluctant to tell him that I had been experiencing something over the last several days that I was frightened to admit. He didn't answer. The silence that followed was deafening. Finally, he rose, his movements stiff and laborious. "I'm going for a walk," he said, reaching the door. "Adam... I began, but he had already gone. The hours went slowly, and every minute seemed like an eternity. I sat near the window watching the street. My concern rose with each passing second that Adam did not return. It wasn't until around midnight that I heard the door open. I ran to the doorway, relief surging through me as I saw him arrive wet from the storm. "Adam, where are you?" I said, my voice shaking. "Walking," he stated simply. Shaking the water out of his hair, I grabbed a towel from the bathroom and handed it to him. "You're going to get sick," I said, my concern pouring over. He groaned, evidently frustrated. "You cannot just vanish like that." "I needed to clear my mind," he stated. He ran the towel over his face. "Did that help?" I said, crossing my arms. He looked at me with dark, unfathomable eyes. "Not really," he said softly. Something about his tone made me pause. I got closer and dropped my voice. "Adam, we cannot continue like this. It is tearing us apart." I know he said something barely audible, but I'm not sure how to stop. "Perhaps we need help," I observed. "Someone should talk with a therapist." His lips create a sour grin. "Do you think a therapist will understand this?" "They may," I said, "but I'm not sure I believe it." "At the very least, assist us figure out how to continue." He shook his head and the towel fell to the floor. "Nobody can heal this, Mom. Nobody can change how I feel." His words lingered in the air, heavy and unchanging. I wanted to disagree and tell him he was wrong. But deep down I knew he was right. The worst aspect was that I hadn't told him that I too felt something. That I was the one fooling him, trying to escape my own feelings for him. I knew, but I said nothing. For the time being, the next few days were filled with avoidance and uncomfortable conversations. Adam tried to behave normally, but the tension between us was obvious. Every contact seemed like walking on a wire, and I couldn't escape the sensation that something was about to break. That thing came one evening as we were washing up after supper. Adam had been unusually silent all day, his movements tight and precise. As I loaded the dishwasher, he leaned against the counter and watched. "Mom," he shouted quickly, breaking the stillness. "I need to tell you something." I turned to face him, my heart pounding. "What is it? I can't take it anymore." He said, his voice shaking. "I can't keep pretending everything's good." I told Adam that we had discussed this, but he shook his head. "No, you don't understand," he said, his voice rising. "I can't just turn off my feelings. I can't keep pretending to be fine when I am not. So what do you want me to do?" I questioned about my mounting dissatisfaction. "What do you expect me to say? I'm not sure." He said, his voice shaking. "I just need you to see me and realize how much this is ripping me apart." "I see you," I said, my voice trembling. "Now I see you every day, Adam, and it breaks my heart to see you like this. But I'm not sure how to fix it." He took a step closer, his stare fixed on me. "You can't fix it," he said gently, "but maybe we don't have to." I gazed at him, my mind racing. "Adam, what are you saying?" He did not react. Instead, he covered the space between us by brushing his palm on mine. My breath caught, and the air between us seemed electric, but the moment was brief. I stepped back, cutting the link. "No," I said firmly, my voice trembling. "We can't." His face crushed agony etched into every line. "I apologize," he said earlier. Turning and walking away, I stopped there, my pulse racing. The weight of what had just happened weighed heavily on me, because no matter how much I tried to ignore it, something inside me had reacted to him that scared me more than anything else as I pondered on the evenings we had spent together. He'd been caressing me more than normal in recent days, and I realized I was doing the same with him. I assume he also saw it, which is why he started the discussion. However, the days after that moment in the kitchen were like walking through a storm, unexpected and overwhelming. Adam and I have avoided one another more than ever. When we did meet paths, our silence spoke more than words. I convinced myself that the gap between us was better for us. But the truth was that every time I saw him withdraw to his room and caught a glimpse of agony in his eyes, it ripped at me. I spent nights replaying the incident, the way he looked at me, the seriousness of his words, and how my heart had fooled me in that little moment of intimacy. It was not right. It wasn't. However, disregarding the subtleties of our emotions seems to worsen the harm Adam caused when he entered the living room one evening when I was reading a book. He paused at the entrance, uncertain whether he was welcome. His hair was untidy, and his attitude was guarded. This was the moment to confess and tell him how I felt. "Adam," I murmured softly, my voice softer than usual. He glanced up, attempting to keep a neutral expression. "Hey," he replied. What's up? He proceeded farther into the room without sitting instead, pacing gently at the edge of the coffee table. I wanted to chat, I told him, staring at him briefly before turning away. I understand things have been challenging for both of us. He nodded before closing and putting the book aside. Yes, they did, but Mom, he added, I don't want you to think I don't care. I do care more than you know. He stopped pacing and turned to face me. I know you care, I stated. That's why this is so tough, because I can't let go no matter how hard I try, or how many times I tell myself to move on, Mom, he said. But I did raise my hand. Let me finish, I said. I've spent a long time trying to figure out what's wrong with me and why I'm feeling this way. But the more I think about it, the more I realize it's not bad to be in love. Is it, even if it goes against the rules or terrifies them? I swallowed hard, feeling my own words pierce something deep inside me. Love is not wrong, as I thoroughly stated. However, there are times when taking action is required, particularly when it may endanger individuals we care about. He nodded slowly, as if he expected the reaction, but wanted to hear it nevertheless. I understand what he said, I do. But what should I do with these feelings? Bury them and pretend they don't exist? No, I eventually said, shaking my head. You don't have to pretend that I also have anything to confess. I'm merely telling you this to help you focus your emotions on something that will help you improve. This is not anything that will keep you back. He collapsed onto the chair opposite from me, his shoulders drooping. This is easier said than done, Mom, but tell me what you need to confess. Well, Adam, I responded gently, I suppose you've noticed that we've been sleeping together for the last several nights. For a minute he did not respond. To my surprise, he offered a little chuckle. What are your touches? He inquired. Of course I noticed, he said. But I reminded myself that you did it to make me feel better. To be honest, they just make me feel lost. They make me feel so near to my objective, but so far away. You are not lost, I murmured, leaning forward. You're still finding your path, and that's okay. Hey, it's part of growing up. He looked at me with vulnerability in his eyes, and my chest ached. I do not want to lose you, Mama, he said. I cannot lose you. You won't, I said firmly. Whatever happens, I'll be here. This will never change. Without his noticing, my heart was pounding in my chest. I still hadn't told him that I believed those touches weren't only for his benefit, but because I needed something deep down. So I decided not to let him come between us again. I needed to clear my head before telling him how I felt. But let me finish what I was going to say, Adam. I explained that such touches were not designed to make you feel wonderful. He questioned. I said that I did it since I was experiencing something as well. In truth, Adam, I still feel something. I was hesitant to tell you because I am your mother, and that felt wrong. We shouldn't feel this way about one other, but I can't deny it. He stayed quiet for a while before bending forward and gripping my calf. I informed Adam that we couldn't do this. What about Dad? We can, he mumbled. No one should know yet. I sensed hesitancy in his eyes. I leaned in and kissed him passionately, but it didn't last long since I knew we couldn't do it. And I knew he wasn't sure either, so I pushed him away. Let's have a good night's rest and talk tomorrow, okay? He nodded, but we knew the tension had not eased. We both used the toilet, brushed our teeth, and prepared for slumber. While putting on my pajamas, I smiled at him as he washed his face. For the last several weeks, I've spent most of my time in bed. We had been sleeping together since the first night of his confession, so it seemed natural for him to accompany me. He entered the room a few seconds later, and before he reached the bed, I opened the covers for him to crawl inside. As I have said, the tension lingered, so I said, let's just rest, and then we'll discuss everything tomorrow before Dad returns, okay? All right, he said. It seemed that he had already accepted that nothing would happen, but I certainly hadn't. Unfortunately, I switched off the nightlight and murmured, "Good night, honey." Turning away from him, "Mom, good night," he replied. My mind was spinning. A few minutes seemed like hours. My ideas were jumbled. At one point, my foot brushed across his leg. He did not turn aside, both on purpose and by coincidence. And before I knew it, I had brought him near to me. He grabbed my leg and I spun around. I took a moment to reflect before allowing things to unfold. I kissed him and we went farther. I won't go into detail about what occurred, but I did let myself go. And for a minute I felt alive. I could forget about everything that had worried me during the last 2 weeks. I closed my eyes and let the moment to sweep over me. And for the first time in ages, I felt alive. This wasn't incorrect. It wasn't perplexing. It was love, pure and simple devotion. And it was the kind of love that had grown spontaneously between us. Years of care, trust, and understanding are paving the path for fresh development. When we were together, I persuaded myself of this, but it all came to an end as quickly as it started. I believe it was too exciting for him. Adam grinned at me as he backed away. We are okay, right? I nodded and headed to the bathroom. The next several weeks were better, even easier. Adam seemed more at ease. However, there were instances when our animosity reappeared. His father had returned, and he started to spend more time outside socializing with friends and pursuing some of the activities he had abandoned. I've spent the past year engrossed in my routines, finding solace in the modest, daily tasks that keep life going. But as much as I wanted to think we were mending, the undercurrent of what had occurred between us remained an unseen thread that bound us together in ways none of us could fully escape. I still have not informed my spouse what happened. Adam and I have not addressed it either. I'm not sure what to do or think. What are your opinions about this? I'm fascinated to hear other people's thoughts. That is why I'm presenting this tale. It seems inconceivable what occurred, yet I cannot deny it. Furthermore, I will be unable to reverse what has occurred.